Ever crack your phone screen and wonder what's actually going on under there?
Or maybe you're getting ready for the CompTIA A+ exam.
Yeah, the 220-1101.
And feeling a little overwhelmed by all the mobile stuff you need to know.
It's a lot. Well, good news, everyone. This is the first of our 5-part series.
A deep dive dedicated to helping you conquer that exam.
And today, it's all about mobile devices.
We're diving deep into those pocket-sized computers we rely on every day.
Smartphones,
Laptops.
tablets, you name it.
Okay,
So
walk away understanding not just the what, but the why behind it all.
the ins and outs, all that.
Yeah.
Ready to tackle those exam questions with confidence. So first things first, the CompTIA folks want to make sure you can identify like the different types of mobile devices,
Which
seems pretty basic.
it's pretty straightforward.
Right.
But it's more than just, knowing a laptop from a tablet.
Yeah. What else is there?
It's about understanding their purposes and use cases, which becomes super important later on when we get into, troubleshooting.
Oh, I see.
Think about it. You wouldn't approach fixing a smartphone issue the same way you would a laptop issue, would you?
That's true.
Right.
Okay, so that makes sense. While it might seem obvious, a big part of this exam is demonstrating that we understand those subtle differences.
Exactly.
Okay. Now, speaking of understanding how things work, let's talk about internal components.
Get into the nitty-gritty.
Yeah, the source material actually shows how to disconnect a laptop keyboard, which I gotta admit, I've always been a little intimidated by opening a laptop.
Yeah, they seem so much more delicate than desktops, right?
They do.
But
Yeah. More fragile.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But don't worry, you don't need to become a pro technician overnight.
Okay, good to know.
The key takeaway here, especially for the exam, is understanding the importance of being methodical.
Okay.
Always, and I can't stress this enough,
Right.
consult the manufacturer's instructions,
Good advice.
if you can. And those tiny screws,
Oh, I know, the worst.
organize them meticulously. Losing one is a surefire way to turn a simple repair into a major headache.
Oh, tell me about it. I've learned that the hard way.
Right.
Yeah. Okay, let's talk storage. We're seeing FSDs everywhere.
Everywhere these days.
But the source material also mentions HDDs.
Right. So
Are those on their way out? Are they obsolete?
not quite extinct yet. While SSDs offer that, mind-blowing speed advantage, think booting your computer in seconds.
Oh, yeah.
HDDs are still hanging in there
They're trying.
because they're easier on the wallet, especially for larger storage needs. Imagine storing a massive video library,
Yeah,
right?
that'd be a lot of gigabytes.
Exactly.
Okay.
On the exam, be prepared for questions like, what is a significant advantage of an SSD over an HDD? Or when might you choose an HDD over an SSD?
Oh, it seems pretty straightforward.
It might seem straightforward, but it's about understanding those trade-offs, right?
So speed versus cost. Okay, got it. Speaking of things we actually interact with directly, let's talk displays.
Okay. Yeah.
The source material talks about LCD screens.
Right.
And it mentions this thing, a digitizer.
So the digitizer.
Is that what makes a touchscreen work?
Exactly.
Okay.
Imagine the digitizer as that invisible layer on top of the LCD that acts like the interpreter between your finger and the phone's brain.
Wow.
Right? You press on the screen, the digitizer senses it, and translates that touch into commands the device can understand.
So if your type screen cracks,
Yeah.
it might actually only be the digitizer, not the whole display. Is that a question I might see?
You're catching on. They love to throw in these real-world scenarios.
Okay, good to know.
So, yes, a cracked touchscreen could be a digitizer issue.
Yep.
But repairs like that are best left to the pros unless you really know what you're doing.
Yeah, probably best not to try that at home.
Exactly.
Okay, good to know. Now, let's talk about something I think we all struggle with, which is batteries. The source material has a whole section on battery health.
Yeah.
And overheating seems to be a common enemy.
It definitely is. Remember those tiny batteries powering or increasingly power-hungry devices?
Yeah.
They generate heat.
Makes sense.
The exam might throw you a scenario. A user complains their phone gets excessively hot while charging. What are some possible causes?
Oh, okay.
This is where understanding the source material comes in.
Right.
Using the wrong charger, a damaged battery, even extreme temperatures can all be culprits.
So using the charger that came with your device.
Yes.
Or at least one that has the same specs as the one that came with it.
The correct specs.
Is really important.
Absolutely.
Okay.
And here's a bonus tip. Those bulky phone cases might look cool,
They do.
but they can trap heat too.
Oh.
So if your device gets too hot, power it down, remove the case, let it cool off in a safe spot.
No need to put it in the fridge or anything.
No extreme temperature swings are just as bad.
Okay, all right. Noted. So let's move beyond the actual physical device itself and talk about connecting these things to networks.
Okay.
The 220.1101 exam really seemed to emphasize different wireless protocols.
It does, and with good reason.
Yeah.
Think about how often you're connecting to Wi-Fi,
All the time.
Bluetooth,
Pretty much.
or using NFC for payments, right?
Yeah, actually, that's a good point.
The exam expects you to be familiar with all of these. You might see a question like, which protocol is most suitable for connecting a wireless headset to a smartphone?
Bluetooth.
That's Bluetooth's domain. Or, which protocol is used for contactless payments?
NFC.
That's where NFC shines.
Okay, so those are easy points right there.
Exactly.
Right, good to know.
Right.
And then there's Wi-Fi.
Of course.
The source material mentions 802.11,
Yes.
which I know is Wi-Fi,
Right.
but it's like a whole family of standards,
You
right?
got it. It's not enough to just know Wi-Fi.
Okay.
You need to understand the different flavors.
Like what?
Like 802.11xe, 802.11x, which was also known as Wi-Fi 6.
Okay.
The exam could ask, what is an advantage of Wi-Fi 6 over older Wi-Fi standards?
So you got to know the difference.
You got to know that Wi-Fi 6 is like the super fast, more efficient, younger sibling in the family.
Okay, I like that analogy.
Right.
All right, so be prepared to dive into those details.
Exactly.
Okay. We've talked about Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, NFC. What about cellular data?
Oh, of course.
That's still how a lot of us connect when we're on the go.
Definitely. And this is where those acronyms, GSM and CDMA, come into play.
Okay.
Now, don't worry about memorizing every technical detail about these for the exam.
Okay, good.
The key is understanding the main difference,
Okay.
especially when it comes to SIM cards and international roaming.
Oh.
GSM is like the global traveler. It uses SIM cards, which are interchangeable.
Right.
CDMA is more common in the U.S.
Right.
And it often doesn't use SIM cards,
Right.
which can make international roaming tricky.
So if you're planning a trip abroad, your phone's cellular technology matters.
It definitely matters.
That's something I wouldn't have even thought about for this exam.
And that's why we're here, to connect those dots, right?
That's why I have you. Okay, so
The examiners want to see that you can apply this knowledge to real-world situations.
That makes sense.
Which brings us to a big one, troubleshooting mobile device connectivity.
Okay, so imagine this. You're at a coffee shop, you desperately need Wi-Fi,
Right.
but your laptop just will not connect.
Yeah, the worst.
The worst. The source material talks about a systematic approach to troubleshooting these situations.
Exactly. Think of it like detective work, right?
Okay.
First, don't panic.
All right, good advice.
Start with the obvious. Is the Wi-Fi actually turned on?
Oh, good point.
Is airplane mode off? You'd be surprised how often that's the issue.
Probably more often than not.
Right. Then check if you're connecting to the correct network and if the password is typed in correctly.
Right.
It seems simple, but those little details can trip anyone up.
Totally. And I bet a lot of people just assume the Wi-Fi is down.
All the time.
Yeah, before even checking their own stuff.
Exactly.
Yeah.
If those initial checks don't do the trick,
Yeah.
then you move on to the next level of investigation, right?
Like what?
Checking the device's IP address, restarting the router, things like that.
So it's all about having a structured approach, not just randomly trying things and hoping for the best.
Exactly.
Okay.
And that's what the CompTIA A+ exam is all about, demonstrating that you have the knowledge and the methodical approach to solve real-world tech problems.
This has been eye-opening.
Right.
We've covered so much already, and we're just getting started with mobile devices.
That's right. We've tackled the different types of devices, peeked under the hood at their inner workings, explored how they connect to the world, and even dipped our toes into troubleshooting.
We've did a lot.
A lot.
And we're just getting warmed up. Make sure to join us for part 2 of this deep dive.
Yeah.
Where we'll be unraveling the mysteries of mobile operating systems.
Stay tuned.
Until then, happy studying. Welcome back, everybody. Last time we talked about hardware, all those physical components.
Right, the nuts and bolts.
Yeah, but this time,
Real deal.
it's all about the brains of the operation. Mobile operating systems.
The software that makes it all happen.
Okay, so where do we even begin?
Well, a great place to start is understanding the functions of a mobile OS.
Okay.
Think about it. Managing applications,
Right.
handling data,
Yeah.
security.
Right.
It's a lot like what an OS does on your computer.
Right.
Just, miniaturized for your mobile device.
Okay, that makes sense.
Hmm.
So if the exam throws a question at me like, what is a core function of a mobile operating system,
Yeah,
I should be ready to talk about things like application management,
definitely.
data synchronization, and
Absolutely.
don't forget about the user interface.
Oh, right, right.
That's a big one. That's how we interact with our devices, right?
And each mobile OS has its own unique way of doing things.
Okay.
So the exam might ask you to compare and contrast the user interfaces of different mobile operating systems, like Android versus iOS, right?
Okay, so you have to know those key differences.
Exactly.
Speaking of different operating systems, the source material mentions understanding the impact of, choosing a specific OS.
Right.
That sounds kind of important.
It's huge. It's crucial. Think about it this way. Choosing a mobile OS is kind of like choosing a car, right?
Good.
Do you want a sporty two-seater or a spacious SUV? It all depends on your needs and priorities, right?
That's the point.
Android is known for its customization options and wide device compatibility.
Okay.
iOS is known for its simplicity and focus on privacy.
Right. Very different.
Very different. The exam might ask you about those differences.
Okay.
Which mobile OS is known for its open source nature?
That would be Android.
That would be Android. You got it.
Okay.
See.
It's like choosing your tech tribe. Okay. Now let's get into some maybe a little bit more technical features of mobile device connectivity.
Okay.
We touched on this a little bit last time.
Yeah, we did.
But the source material goes deeper into specific technologies.
Right,
Like
yeah.
GPS, NFC, Bluetooth, things like that.
And these are prime exam topics right here.
Good to know.
Think about how often you rely on these features in your daily life, right?
Right.
GPS gets you where you need to go. NFC lets you make those contactless payments.
Right.
And Bluetooth, connects your wireless headphones.
Right. Right. All very important.
The examiners want to know that you understand how these technologies actually work and how they're used in mobile devices.
Okay. So if the exam asks, what technology enables a smartphone to make contactless payments?
Okay.
I should just shout out NFC.
You got it.
Confidently.
Confidently. NFC.
Okay.
They might even throw in a scenario like, a user's having trouble connecting their Bluetooth headphones. What are some troubleshooting steps? This is where understanding the pairing process, potential interference,
Right.
even checking for software updates
Oh, yeah. That's always a good one.
comes in handy.
So it's like those detective skills we talked about earlier,
Exactly.
but for mobile connectivity.
For mobile connectivity.
Okay. Speaking of connecting, let's talk about email protocols.
Oh, right.
I use email on my phone constantly, but I'll admit, I have no idea how it actually works.
Behind the scenes,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, how does it get there?
You're not alone.
Okay, good.
But for the exam, it's helpful to understand the basics of how email is delivered and received on mobile devices.
Okay.
The source material mentions protocols like POP3 and IMAP, which might sound like a foreign language,
They kind of do.
but think of them as different ways your phone can talk to the email server.
Okay, so POP3 and IMAP are
Yeah.
different languages for email.
Essentially.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do I need to be fluent in both
Aha.
for the exam?
You don't need to be a linguist,
Okay, good.
but understanding the key difference is important.
Okay.
Imagine POP3 as downloading your mail to your device.
Okay.
Once it's downloaded, it's yours.
Okay.
Any changes you make only affect that copy.
Got it.
IMP is like viewing your mail live at the post office.
Okay.
So any changes you make are reflected everywhere.
Oh, okay.
The exam might ask, what's a key difference between POP3 and IMAP?
Okay.
And your understanding of how they handle messages across multiple devices is key here.
So with IMAP, if you read an email on your phone, then it'll also show as read on your computer.
Exactly.
Okay, and POP3 is not like that.
Not like that now.
Okay, that actually makes a lot more sense now.
Right.
I feel like I learned something.
Here you go.
See,
Okay.
switching gears a bit.
All right.
The source material also dives into synchronization,
Right. Which
it seems like everything is synced these days.
Oh, you're not wrong. Contacts, calendars, emails, you name it.
Yeah.
It's all about making sure your data is consistent across your multiple devices. So
Okay.
you update a contact on your phone, it updates on your tablet,
Right.
and so on.
Seamless.
This is where cloud synchronization comes into play.
Okay.
Services like iCloud, Google Sync, you've probably heard of these.
Yeah, use those.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly. So if I get a question about ensuring calendar events are consistent across the user's devices,
Yeah.
I should be thinking about cloud synchronization.
Cloud synchronization.
You got it.
Okay.
They might even ask about the different methods of synchronization.
Oh, okay. Like what?
like over-the-air synchronization,
Right.
using cellular data or Wi-Fi,
Right.
or they might ask about, like, the security implications of synchronization.
Oh, right, right.
Like, what are some risks associated with synchronizing, like, sensitive data to the cloud?
Right, because it's not all like sunshine and roses, right?
There's always a trade-off.
Yeah, there's downsides,
Yeah,
potentially.
exactly.
I-
And that's what makes this exam so interesting. It's not just about the technology itself, but, like,
Right.
how it affects us as users.
It's about the real world.
Real-world implications.
Oh, okay, cool.
Right.
Yeah. Welcome back to our deep dive into mobile devices. We've talked about all sorts of things, the hardware, the operating systems, but there's one more super important aspect of mobile devices we got to talk about.
Yeah, especially in today's world, we got to talk security.
Right, because it's one thing to know how to use these devices,
Right.
but keeping them and like all the information they have safe,
All that data.
that's a whole other thing.
It's huge.
Yeah. And the CompTIA Plus exam knows this too.
Oh, yeah.
The source material has a lot to say about security concepts and like best practices. And I got to admit, it's a little intimidating.
It can be. Think about how much we rely on our mobile devices for everything these days.
Oh, I know. Communication, online banking, shopping.
Storing personal photos, all of it.
Seems like our whole lives are on these things.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
So protecting those devices and the data they contain, it's more critical now than ever before, right?
Yeah, for sure.
The exam wants to make sure you're equipped to handle that.
So it's not just about knowing how to connect to Wi-Fi,
Right.
but like knowing how to connect securely.
Exactly.
Okay.
Remember those like public Wi-Fi networks we're all tempted to use at the coffee shop, at the airport?
So convenient,
Super convenient.
but probably not the safest.
But they're also a potential playground for hackers.
Okay, yeah, not good. So the exam might ask something like, a user is concerned about the security of their data while using public Wi-Fi.
Right.
What advice would you give?
Okay, so put on your tech support hat.
Okay, all right. I would probably tell them to avoid accessing sensitive information, like online banking, while on public Wi-Fi.
Okay, good start.
And maybe suggest using a VPN.
Yes.
Right.
That's a good one.
It's like creating a secret tunnel for your data.
Exactly.
Makes it a lot harder for
Yeah.
like snoopers to intercept it.
You nailed it. That's the kind of real-world application the exam is looking for.
Okay, good.
Understanding that a VPN adds that extra layer of security,
Yeah.
especially on these public networks, it's crucial.
VPNs, check. What else? What other security things should we be thinking about?
Well, let's talk about authentication.
Okay.
Remember we talked about passwords?
Right.
They're like the first line of defense for most of our accounts.
Right,
And mobile devices are no exception.
right, right. And actually, the source material really stresses strong passwords, but it's not just about that, right? There's also things like pins, patterns.
Biometrics, even.
Yeah, all that stuff.
It's all in the mix now. And this is where understanding the different types of authentication and their strengths and weaknesses is super important.
Right, because a 4-digit pin is better than nothing.
It's better than nothing.
It's like the most secure.
It's not the be-all, end-all.
Exactly. A
Mhm.
complex password or biometric authentication, like, your fingerprint,
Yeah.
that offers a lot stronger protection. So the exam might ask something like, what are some common authentication methods used on mobile devices? Or what are the advantages and disadvantages of different authentication methods?
Exactly.
Okay, so you got to know your stuff.
So you gotta know it. And don't forget about the human element too, though.
Oh, right, because it's not just about the technology.
Right, exactly.
Yeah,
Social engineering is still a major threat, tricking people.
because people are so gullible.
Oh, no, it's scary how convincing these phishing scams can be.
They're getting good at it.
They're good. That's why user education is so important.
Right. Be careful what you click on.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The exam might test your knowledge on this too.
Oh, really?
Okay, like how?
Like, what are some common social engineering tactics used to target mobile device users?
Okay, so be prepared for that.
Be prepared.
Okay, so we've talked about like securing our connections and like proving it's us with authentication.
But what about the data itself? Like, how do we make sure our personal information is actually private and protected?
Right, so that's where things like device encryption and remote wipe features come in.
Okay, so device encryption is kind of like putting all your data in a lockbox.
Essentially, yeah.
So even if someone gets your phone, they can't get to your data without the key.
Without the encryption key, exactly. And most modern smartphones have this built in.
You do. Okay.
But it's important to make sure it's turned on.
Oh, so it's not always on by default.
Not always. Double check.
Okay, good to know. And then Remote wipe.
Yeah, that's like the emergency button.
Yeah, like the last resort.
Lost or stolen phone.
Yep.
You can remotely erase all the data
Everything.
so it doesn't fall into the wrong hands.
Okay, that's good. Could they ask about that on the exam too?
Oh, you bet. They might ask you to explain these security features.
Okay.
Like, what is the purpose of device encryption? Or how does remote wipe enhance mobile device security?
Man, this is a lot. It's
Yeah.
like mobile security is this never-ending game of like cat and mouse.
It really is. Technology is always changing,
Right.
and new threats are always popping up.
Right, so you got to stay ahead of the game.
You got to stay ahead of it.
Okay, well, I feel like I learned a ton in this deep dive.
Good.
There was a lot to take in, but it's not just about memorizing a bunch of facts and figures. It's about like really understanding these ideas and knowing how to use them in real life.
Absolutely. And that's what the CompTIA A+ exam is all about, demonstrating that you have that knowledge.
Right, you're not just like
Yeah.
a robot spitting back answers.
Exactly.
Okay.
You can actually apply it to those real-world situations.
And on that note, we've reached the end of our mobile devices deep dive. We started with the physical parts, the hardware,
Right.
explored the software side, those mobile operating systems.
And how they all work together.
Yeah. And then we finished strong with the essential stuff,
It's
security,
the important stuff.
because none of it matters if your device isn't secure.
It's all connected.
So to everyone listening, remember, the CompTIA A+ 220-1101 exam, it's not just about what you know, it's about how you use it.
Think practical. Imagine yourself in those scenarios, guiding someone through these tech challenges.
Because that's what being a tech pro is all about, right?
Right.
Solving problems and helping people.
Exactly.
All right, everyone, keep those brains buzzing, keep exploring the world of tech, and we'll see you in our next deep dive as we journey further into the exciting world of the CompTIA P+ exam. Happy studying.